Welcome back to the Montana Garage. As you can see, we are definitely getting a little taste of winter right now. We haven't had this much snow in the yard for a while. And it's currently about 0 degrees. And it's going to be about -20 tonight. So it's going to be like that for the next 3 or 4 days or so, I guess. But something showed up today. And I don't have any heat on out here in the shop, so it's going to be a little chilly. But I got something out here I got to show you. Well, bam! I got me a big old box, or shall we say a crate, delivered today. I wonder what's in there. If you've been following along, you know I've been talking about doing Big Sky Race Week again. But I've kind of hinted, like, do I want to do it in the 55 with more power? Because last time, Big Sky Race Week was a success in that I made it and I had a great time, but it was a bit of a failure because the car is just super slow. And I didn't want to do that again. I mean, the car is fun to drive, but I just didn't want to take it to a racetrack when it's so much of not a race car. So I've been hinting, like, should I do the 57, make it more streetable and make it so it can handle the driving portion, because it's definitely got more power. But I decided I want to leave the 57 more of a racy, you know, drag car, cruise around the street a little bit, but I'm not driving it 1,000 miles. I don't want to get rid of the mechanical injection. So that's right. We're taking the Baremetal 55 back to Big Sky Race Week, and to do that, I needed more power. Well, that's what's in the box. More power, baby. I got the box a few hours ago, but I've been working all day. I had to go back to work once I got it, so I haven't had a chance to open it up. I'm not really going to tell you what's in there until we, you know, see what's in there. I mean, you kind of have an idea what's in there, right? But you don't know what it is. Is it a big block? Is it a small block? Did I go LS? What kind of crazy stuff I got going on here? How much power is in there? Anyways, let me get set up. I need to turn some heat on. It is freaking cold out here, and I gotta see if I can get the heater to work, and then I'll set the camera up and we'll do a little bit of unboxing, uncrating, if you will, means it's a crate engine. That's what's in there, right? So let's do it. As usual, I still haven't really gotten on top of a lot of things, so I still have 0 insulation in the lid of this place, even though I insulated the walls. A lot of good did me because I haven't got around to that. So I do got this little heater up here, but I can't even turn it on when it's just cold. It just says low. So to make the heat work, I got to get the heat gun out, crank it up a little bit. We got to make the thermostat think it's at least 32 degrees in here, or it won't come on. So let's warm this up, then we can turn that on and hopefully warm the whole place up. Then we'll see what's in the box. Nothing like an ice cold beverage when it's 20 degrees in the shop. Gotta get a drink before I get started. Plus, check out the cool can koozie my wife made me. Pretty sweet, huh? Let me know if you want one or something similar. We might be able to work something out. Send me an email. Leave a comment, something. Anyways, let's open the box, huh? Look at that, I didn't even need to open that. Oh boy. Oh boy. All right, let's check it out here. We got t-shirt. Spend a bazillion dollars, get a free t-shirt. What a deal. Looks like we got some instructions, a dyno sheet. Curious to see what that bad boy says, huh? What's down here? Got some plug wires. Some carburetor stud kit. And an AED performance carburetor. What we have here is a 427 cubic inch small block Chevrolet that when I ordered it was advertised to make 580 horsepower. I can't remember where the RPM is at that. There's a dyno sheet, so we'll check that out. It's from CNC Motorsports in Brookings, South Dakota. I don't have any experience with these guys personally. My brother-in-law is a diesel mechanic, race car racer, drag racer. He's had lots of dealings with them, and he has lots of friends that have dealt with them. So he recommended that I call this place, and I called them and asked them a bunch of questions about, you know, what I'm trying to do with the car. I want some power, but I want to be able to drive the car. It's a 4-speed, blah, blah, blah. This is the engine that the guys at CNC recommended. Super knowledgeable on the phone, answered all my questions. Super fast turnaround. This is one of their most popular engines, so they have one built already. So it's been less than a month since I pulled the trigger on this thing. And here it is at my door. It would have been here like a week ago, but the bad weather, it got delayed in shipping. So you need something fast, give these guys a call. I think, you know, if they got to build it for you, it's going to take a little bit longer. But if you're looking for one of the ones they have on the shelf, they get it right out to a guy. We'll look at the paperwork, and I'm sure it has all the details. I saw it on the internet when I ordered it, you know, about what all is inside of there. But it comes with or it didn't come with this, but I ordered it with MSD ignition and a carburetor. To get their warranty, you had to order the ignition and the carburetor. I already had an MSD ignition, and if you've been watching, you know I got a crappy carburetor. It's an ATM carburetor. Maybe it would work good on this engine, but it didn't work on that engine, and I haven't figured it out yet. So I kind of need a carburetor anyway. So I got the MSD ignition, and the guys at CNC Motorsports, they recommended an AED carburetor. So we'll get into that too. I don't think I've ever even heard of AED carburetors, but they couldn't say enough good about them. So I took their word for it and got her coming. So let's open some paperwork and see what we got. All right, we got stickers. You can always use stickers, right? Comp cams, Molly pistons, specified dampener. It's a Dart block. Oh, Lunati cams. So I don't know, figure out which one it is. ARP products, comp cams, SFI crankshaft dampener. Blueprint form, so all the measurements, main clearances, rod clearances, intake guide stuff, locator, cap. So this is a cylinder head worksheet. So obviously it's aluminum cylinder heads. They are, the cylinder heads are just built by CNC Motorsports. Compression ratio worksheet, cylinder head volume. So it ends up, looks like they say 10.49 to 1 compression. It's a pump gas motor. I can just run, you know, 92 octane or whatever it is in there. They call it a 427. Looks like there's actually 428 inches displacement. Got the ring measurements and all the stuff that I don't know nothing about, but that's why I had them do it, because they know about it. And then here's the, this is what everybody wants to see, right? Max 587 torque and 584 horsepower. So just below 6,000 RPM looks like for max power, and max torque is way down here right at 5,000 RPM. Dart iron small block Chevy. So this is just some more information about what it is. Oil pump. All right, I don't want to bore you too much with that, but yeah, that's what we got. All right, so without reading through all of this, I'm just going to list you off. This is from the website where I ordered it. This tells you what this tells us everything that's inside of that bad boy. So we got a Dart SHP block, Scat forged crankshaft, Scat H-beam connecting rods, Molly dish pistons, Molly performance rings, Cleveite 7.7 bearings, Kevco oil pan, Melling oil pump, Cloy's double roller timing set, Kevco heavy duty timing cover, Pro Race SFI harmonic balancer, CNC custom hydraulic roller camshaft, Lunati lifters, CNC Motorsports ported aluminum cylinder heads, Manley valves, comp springs, locks, retainers, Trend push rods, Lunati roller rockers, CNC valve covers, Edelbrock single plane intake manifold, ARP hardware, Fel Pro gaskets. So there you have it, the old Baremetal 55. She's got a brand new bullet. Gonna spice things up a little bit. So all you gotta do now is get that old small block out of there and get that new small block in there. But before we do that, I wanna get this mess cleaned up. The rest of this video is gonna be about trying to put the mechanical injection back on the big block in the 57. This intake is just sitting here, and I'll go into why I took that off, and we'll try to put that back together, hopefully starting first thing tomorrow. See you then. And welcome back to the Montana Garage. It is not the next day, it is more like a week later. I got my list of excuses like usual. It got super cold. It was like 20 below zero for, you know, 3 or 4 days in a row. I mean, it got up to zero, or I don't know if it got above zero for 3 or 4 days. And my little heater and no insulation, it's just too hard to warm it up out here enough to do anything. Plus I had to work, and I don't know, it's the middle of winter. I'm not driving any of these things anytime soon, so I guess I was in no hurry. Still got the engine sitting here, and I got some more boxes. I'm not going to get into what's in those boxes until we get onto the next video working on the 55 here, but more goodies. So like I said, we are going to start by trying to put the 57 back together. I was just going to show you that winter is still in full force here. It's been snowing the last few days, almost non-stop. And we got, I don't know, there's probably 18 inches of snow in our yard, maybe, something like that. Big old piles from trying to shovel it. And still cold, it's like 8 degrees heat's been rolling for a couple hours and it's still only 40 degrees in here, but at least it's comfortable enough to do something. So let's stop talking about it and do something. All right, I've done a couple videos on the 57 sedan delivery here, but I'm just going to do a quick little recap. I'll maybe put a link up here to some of the old videos where I go into more detail about what this is and why I have it and all that stuff. But basically, 57 Chevy sedan delivery. It's kind of been built into a pro street car. I mean, it's tubbed. It's got some wheelie bar action, bare bones on the inside, kind of race car vibe with the metal tubs and roll bar and whatnot. And kind of the heart of the beast, it's a 427 big block Chevy. It's a real L88. It's got the aluminum snowflake heads, and it's got a Hilborn injection manifold. And like I say, that's kind of the cherry on top. It's the Hilborn injection. If anybody knows anything about those, it's the old school mechanical injection, so it's not recommended or used, or I mean, people use them on the street. Even Hilborn will tell you it's not recommended for street driving. They work good at idle and at full wide open throttle. There's no like accelerator pumps, so it bogs out a little bit. It's just like street driving, it isn't the greatest. Now there's people that are a lot smarter than me that have figured it out and do street drive it, and I street drive this too, or I used to, and not a ton, but you know, I drive around town. It's just never gonna be like something I'm gonna take on a drag and drive or whatever with this setup, but I want to keep the setup. I inherited the car from my uncle. Long story short, just ever since I was just a little feller, this car was sitting in my grandma's garage where my uncle lived most of his life, and he was just always working on it, and he had the injection either on it or sitting. If the engine was out, for a long time I can remember the injection with the stacks was just like sitting like as a display piece in his room on his dresser. I don't know, that's the way he wanted to build it. It's really his car. He passed away 20 years ago now, probably more than that, and left it to me because I used to go work on it with him, and he used to help me with my car and all that good stuff. So I've just decided that I just kind of want to keep it in the spirit of what he wanted. It's kind of like originally it was going to be a gasser. Like he had the high stands, there's what he was going to paint it red. He had the tires were sticking out, the wheel wells. And then it took him so long to build it, the styles kind of changed, and then he decided to build it kind of into a pro street car. So we took it all the way back off the frame, narrowed the rear end, kind of went for a different direction. And then he changed, he was going to paint it red, and then he changed, decided he was going to paint it white. But the heart of the beast always stayed the same. So it's no longer like intended to be like a gasser build, more of just like a, old school pro street car. So I want to keep the injection, but it started not working right. When I got the car, the motor was in it. My uncle had driven it a few times, like just around the block and that sort of thing, where he lived. He was from South Dakota. And then once I got the car, it had been taken back apart and never really completely put back together. So like the motor was in it, the radiator wasn't, none of the injection lines were hooked up. Like he hadn't had it running again since he went through kind of the retransformation from gasser to pro street type thing. And so I had to kind of learn. Luckily, the thing I have that he didn't have the internet. Obviously, back in his day, I have a bunch of Hilborn manuals and stuff, and he has correspondence back and forth with Hilborn, asking him questions like via, like he was faxing it to him and stuff like that. So that's crazy. Like we can just get on the internet now, and 800 people will answer you a question if if you're lucky, but you'll get 800 different answers. Is the problem. Anyways, so he didn't have the ability to ask all these questions, but he figured it out, and so I didn't really know anything about it, but luckily I had the internet and had some of the manuals and stuff from him. So I figured out how to put it all together, and I got it running, and it actually ran pretty good. Like I said, I would drive it into town, just go on little cruises around the neighborhood, that sort of thing. I never went very far. I went to a car show once that was 8 miles away. I got a 5-gallon fuel cell or fuel tank or whatever, what do you call that thing? The little moon tank. I got a 5-gallon moon tank. The car show was 8 miles away. I made it there 8 miles, and I made it a couple miles back, and I ran out of gas. So yeah, it's like gallons per mile, not miles per gallon almost. I think it was running pretty decent until I tried to take it on the first drive after I started the little YouTube thing. When I was getting this all figured out and stuff, I didn't do the YouTube thing. Once I was doing YouTube, obviously I've been focused mostly on the Baremetal 55 over there, but I've done a couple videos on this. And I tried to take you guys all for a drive one time, and that's the first time it started acting up. It started popping back through the injector, almost kind of like a lean condition, And so I messed with a few little things, drove it a few more times. I just could not get it to go away. Like it was pop, pop, pop. I don't know if I can, what I got hooked up or don't have hooked up here, but if we look on this side, you know, and I think I cleaned them off. It was actually getting all full of soot and everything on the bottom side of the butterflies from when it was popping back up through. You could actually see, you know, like the little backfire. So again, I don't know everything about this stuff, but the few things I know, I started messing with. So I actually made a list over here of everything I tried to do. I assumed it was injector related. I mean, it was working fine, and then it wasn't. And to me, when I used to drive it, it was always, you had a hard time not fouling out the plugs, not running. It was always running too rich. It's always getting too much gas. You get gas in the oil and stuff like that. You change oil a lot. And now all of a sudden it seemed like it wasn't getting enough fuel. So I did the simple stuff, you know, I tried changing the pills. That's like the little jet that tells the, you know, that's enough. It lets, what it does actually, it lets fuel back to the return, back to the tank. And so the more you return back to the tank, the less the engine gets. So you adjust, that's kind of how you adjust how much fuel is going to the engine. The fuel pump just runs off the crank. So the faster the crank spins, the more fuel it sends to the engine. And then you use the little pills, or kind of like a jet, to kind of tailor that or adjust that into where it needs to be. Again, I'm no expert. I'm not making this up as I go. I know a little bit, but you know, it's very variable on the weather conditions and all that stuff. So you're supposed to, you have to really adjust it a lot to keep it running optimal. So I started by just changing the pills, and I used to have to run a big pill to try to give it less fuel, so a bigger hole, so it was returning more gas back to the return tank and less to the engine, and it would still be rich. Now all of a sudden it didn't seem like it was getting enough gas, so I swapped those pills to, you know, a smaller pill, so more pills going, and I don't remember the numbers, but like I have like a 110 in it. I went way up to like 185, or let's see, am I doing that right? Whichever, I had to go, yeah, you got to go to, no, I had to go to a smaller hole, so I went way down to like 75. But since then, I've tried going I've swung to the fences both directions with the pills, and it didn't seem to make a difference as far as the popping back through the intake. So I thought maybe the fuel pump is, you know, dying or giving out, it's not pumping. I actually I sent the fuel pump off to get it flowed, so you know how many gallons per minute, I think is how it's measured, that the fuel pump flows, so you can use that information to try to use these formulas and adjust what pills to use. I thought maybe the fuel pump was, you know, dying or whatever. I actually have a spare one, and it was flowed as well, and so and it flowed pretty similar. I switched fuel pumps, no difference. I did what's called a leak down test. I think I had a video of that, and that's where you kind of just adjust some things. Anyways, that didn't make any difference. I've gone through and I've readjusted. There's a adjustment procedure for adjusting all these butterflies, so they're all opening the same, you know, they're closing and opening the same each cylinder, and also side to side, so they're all in sync or in tune. I've gone through and done all that. I went through I checked the fuel filter, make sure it wasn't plugged. I blew all the fuel lines out. There's little injector nozzles right here in each cylinder. I took all those out and cleaned them. They didn't look bad, but you know, I cleaned them. I blew out all the fuel lines, cleaned the injector nozzle, tried the different fuel pump. It had been sitting for a while when it first started, so I tried new gas. That didn't make a difference. So all those things are what I know to do with the ignition, and nothing made a difference. And I mean, it would get a little better, a little worse, but not enough to make it seem like anything that I tried was the culprit, you know. It seemed like over time it started getting worse, really, no matter what I tried. And then it started, instead of just popping back through the ignition, I could hardly keep it running. And it would be running, and then it would just like shut off, almost like you shut the key off, like just the ignition went away. Like all of a sudden there was no spark. And so then I started thinking, is it ignition? So then I went through and did all the ignition things that a guy knows to do, right? Like I adjusted the timing up and down. It didn't seem to make a difference as far as the little pop, pop, pop back through the injector. I tried different plugs, obviously. I tried, some of my spark plug wires had kind of tape on them because they got hot, and I thought, well, maybe they're shorting out or something. So I had some old spark plug wires, I think, off the 55 over there, and I had to kind of cobble some of these and some of these together, but I put different plug wires on it. It had a Mallory Unilite distributor in it, and so I tried plugs and plug wires. I tried a different coil that I had just in a box. No, I don't know if it's good or not. It's the only problem. It would run, but it still did the poppy thing. So then I had a Mallory Unilite distributor, and I did a little research on those, and it seemed like they were either good or they were bad, but then I found a thing where some of them were causing like that kind of some weird intermittent issue, so I thought maybe it's a distributor. So I took I basically replaced the whole ignition. Like there's the MSD or the Mallory Unilight, the Mallory coil, the plug wires, like I said, that some were taped up. I replaced all that. I got new plugs, new plug wires. I bought a new distributor. I went with an MSD distributor. So I just kind of became a parts changer because I didn't know what else to do. And you know what? It still pops through the ignition. And so then the only other thing I hadn't changed was the MSD box, which I have mounted on the inside of the firewall there. And I don't know. I just said, well, I've traced everything else. So I bought a different MSD box. You know what? No difference. Pop, pop, pop. And like, no difference other than the fact it seemed like it gradually got worse and worse and worse, even though I was putting new parts on. So then my last hope, so maybe it was like a vacuum leak, and the, you know, there's no vacuum ports or nothing on here really to leak. Like there's no vacuum caps or vacuum little rubber plug things or anything. But I thought maybe it was leaking, you know, I had an internal vacuum leak. And I thought I had put a wrench on all these bolts and tried to snug them up, and maybe I did, but there's a couple that are hard to get to, so I must not have done those ones. I don't know. Anyways, I decided to pull the intake. So that's where I'm at now. I popped it off, and I was hoping to see like a bad intake gasket or something, but they're all good. This one is ripped, but I did that taking it off. So I thought maybe one of these was blown out or something, and it had a vacuum leak inside, and that was causing some issue. So I don't know if that's the case, but what I did have is they all look good, and I tried to tighten some of the bolts, but a couple of the bolts, the ones I couldn't get to, were really, I mean, they were just barely, they were loose. I mean, not like finger tight, but once you put the little wrench on it, it was just barely anything. So now my last hope is that there was like some sort of internal vacuum leak, and maybe that wouldn't even cause the problem, but I mean, I'm out of ideas, I guess. So I'm hoping that's what it is or was. So where I'm at now is I got new intake gaskets, and I'm gonna put it back together and see what happens. I mean, hopefully it was that vacuum leak thing and it's gonna run better again, but I'm skeptical it's gonna make any difference. And of course, if you happen to be an expert on this system over here, or maybe not even expert, just smarter than me, which isn't gonna be that hard, leave me a comment and let me know what you think it is, or what it was, or what it could be, or am I wasting my time here, or what the, I don't know. Let me help a guy out, would you? So it's been a while. I could look at my pictures. I didn't take any video when I was taking this apart. I took a few pictures of it so I could try to remember, you know, how all the doodads and whatnots in here were put together, so I can try to put it together, right? So I took some pictures. I guess I could look at those and see, but I bet it's been a solid 2 months since I took it apart. And I've left, you know, this was kind of my setup when I took it apart, and I left all the tools that I used and all the nuts and bolts and everything should be kind of in order here. So hopefully my little brain is good enough to remember how to put it all back together. So we'll start by, I guess, getting that off of there. I might have to, I think it all came out pretty clean, but again, it's been a couple months. We'll pull it off and look and see if any gasket material needs cleaned up. Yeah, we'll just try to put it back together. All right, so we got a little bit of the old Permatex or whatever on the front and the back. We got to get cleaned off of here. And inside, we got a little bit of stuff to get cleaned off of here, off the back, and like I said, off the intake, and then we'll put her back on. Got the gasket surfaces, both sides of the intake are pretty clean. And same thing, I did all the scraping and scrubbing over here on the block, so everything's all ready to go. Got some fresh gaskets here, and I know if you ask 8 different people, they'll tell you 10 different ways that you should or shouldn't do this. But what I've done, and I haven't had any issues with it, is I will put I put some of this black RTV around the cooling ports only, so front and back, and then I don't know, maybe that's a little extra sealing there, and if nothing else, it holds the intake gasket in place. If you don't put something on there, it just slides down, so you can get it lined up, hold it in place, and then a nice big heavy bead of black RTV front and back, and then we'll plonk her down in place. I think I got her plonked down pretty good. Didn't really have to move it. I can see my holes are lined up. got plenty of squish out here, so I know I got a good seal, and I poked around in the back and I can see the same thing back there. So we'll grab some bolts and start bolting her down. All right, I got a couple different style of bolts here. I got like an Allen head and a little, what is that, a 7/16 or 3/8 inch head, depending on what you can get where. I think I left these in order from hopefully front of engine to back of engine, left side and right side. So we'll plonk them back in that order. I also looked, and I wrote it down somewhere. It looks like all the holes are like dead holes except for 1 and 5 on driver's side and 4 and 8 on passenger side. They may go into the coolant, I'm not even sure, but the little feeler thing I stuck in there kept going, so I'll throw some sealant on those. I'll probably put some anti-seize on all of them because they're going into aluminum. We got them all started. As you can see, this is a little different than your average intake, so kind of got, you know, kind of some tough access to some of these. So we got a couple different kind of bolts. We got an Allen head and a little, I think it's a 3/8, and then I got this guy, and I must have put away, I should have a couple little curvy wrenches. Might have already used them again to put them away. So we'll find that and see if we can get this thing tightened up. Snug down. Now I'll go around like in a circular pattern, I think, starting in the center and kind of going around and tighten them down. I think you're supposed to torque them, but there's no way to get torque wrench on any of this stuff, so we go to, you know, tight. And well, bam, intake is tightened. It's torqued to, you know, spec all the way around. So the next thing we got to do, anytime with this Hilborn injection with these butterflies and whatnot, anytime you tighten or loosen the intake, it could, you know, tweak things just a little bit, and you don't want any of these butterflies hanging up in here. So now we have to go through and readjust the butterflies. You can see how they all open in sync, or pretty close to in sync. That's one of the things we got to check. It almost feels like they're kind of sticking a little bit at the very beginning. So I'll have to do some research and find the process again, because I've only done it a few times, but it involves loosening all these screws, tapping it back and forth, tapping them around, and then tightening them back up, both sides obviously. And then you're supposed to check and make sure this stuff's in sync. I can't imagine that would change, but I'll check that out again too. We'll make sure all that stuff's right before we figure out how to put all these, you know, we got a bunch of fuel lines and coolant lines. We got to get the distributor back in, all sorts of good stuff. All right, it's the next night, but we're back right where we left off. My daughter showed up last night, and she had just gone on a trip to Mexico for a few days, or close to a week, I guess. And so I went inside to hear about her stories, and it sounds like it was not 20 below zero in Mexico for the last week, so she picked a good time to go. Anyways, we're back, and what we have to do is, or what we're working on is getting these butterflies adjusted. I have the intake all torqued down to my tight spec based on, you know, feeling, I guess is all. And now we need to center and adjust all the butterflies. So as you can see, they operate together obviously, and the goal is you want all these to flow the same. So I can tell right now they're actually kind of like sticking a little bit right there. So the first thing I've had to do is, there's no return springs. You want to remove all the return springs. And if you really want to know how to do this, there's some videos on the Hilborn injection, or Google Hilborn injection adjustments, and you'll get people that really know what they're doing, but I'm going to show you what I've learned. So first thing we got to do on each side, here and here, there's a little throttle stop. So I've already backed those off so they are not hitting. So they're loose and that's not limiting the travel of the butterflies. So we did that, and then we have to grab a little Allen wrench, and we want to make both of we want to make the sides operate independent of each other. So I'm going to loosen this little arm here below the hex link. So now I loosened this hex link right here. This is what connects the two rods together. So now I'm operating this side, but not this side. So once we've done that, we need to loosen all these little butterfly nuts, or screws, I guess they are. quite see the last one from there. All right, so now all those guys are loose. Now this rod, I don't know the technical term for it, shaft, see how it moves in and out. So I got to set you guys down, but what I'm going to do is wiggle this in and out and tap on these at the same time to get everything to kind of find its home, if you will. So I'm going to do that again where I can use both hands. So wiggle and tap. And then I want to try to find the center of the shaft movement. Center that bad boy. Now I'm going to tighten them up. They say to tighten one screw on each butterfly first. Go back and tighten the next one. And it's only one side, but now it doesn't want to stick. So that's definitely operating smoother. So now I got to do the same thing on the second side. We got both sides of these adjusted, so the butterflies should be centered in the bores. Like I said before, they just open a lot. They're still operating independent of each other, but get a nice thunk when they close, and there's not like a lot of sticky like there was before. And then this side, same thing. So now what we're going to try to adjust is the length of this hex link, and it should be pretty close. I did go ahead and loosen the jam nuts here. So what this is going to do, when you turn this, it's going to make the distance between these two heim joints either longer or shorter. So what you want is you want the distance from this heim joint to this one that's over here, the same distance as these two shafts are. So you want it centered on that shaft. So how you measure that, it's just an eyeball measurement to get started. We'll do some fine tuning in a little bit. I still have them operating independent of each other. So I'm going to bring that one up to where it's straight up and down. And I just want to eyeball, that's kind of in the way, so we'll come over here. And like I said, this should be pretty close because I might have moved it a little just when I was loosening the jam nuts. So I'm gonna say, we need to spread it out just a hair, because this one is, to me, pointing inside a little bit rather than straight up and down. I don't know which way I gotta turn this, we'll figure it out. Okay, so that lengthened it. Let's check again on this side. I shouldn't have had to turn it that far, so I've already got it all screwed up now. Straight up and down. All right, so I'm going to start, this is the one that's tight, so I guess I should be looking at that one first to get that one straight up and down, because the other one's the one that's moving because it's loose. And I'm going to say that's probably pretty good right there. So we'll lock these jam nuts back down and move on to the next thing. All right, I actually didn't lock down the jam nuts, but I kind of finger tightened them because we're still going to be adjusting that a little bit more to get it dialed in a little closer. So the next thing we want to do is this is the heim joint or the arm that is still attached to the rod, so it's still attached to the shaft. So now we want to make sure we want this arm, and I'm kind of backwards here so it's hard to see, this arm, when we open and close it, and I have to do it by hand, we want to split the difference between here, how far it opens. So we don't want it to start like here and end here. We want it to kind of be equal distance on both sides. So this should be as far to the side of the shaft as this, and I've already messed with this before, so that to me seems pretty darn close. Keep jamming up because we're loose over here. We're closed all the way this way, so we want this angle to match this angle, and to adjust that I would loosen the bolt on this little arm and then move it to where I need to do. I don't think I'm going to move that one. I think I got her where we want her. All right, so we got that where we want it. Equal distance on both sides. We're going to make sure everything's closed. That's closed, that's closed. And now we're going to snug up the arm on this side to tie them back together in that position. All right, now this should be opening together. And there's no, like before I adjusted, like I said, it was kind of sticking right here. Now there's no sticky sticking. All right, so that gets us ballpark-ish, right? So now we have to fine tune this hex link adjustment. And I don't remember how I did that before, because what you need is a little tool you stick in the bore here on each side to measure kind of this distance. And I might just try to use some screwdrivers or something. I don't remember how I did it before. But this time I'm gonna go make the little tool that they tell you need so I can make sure I get it right. So next step, tool manufacturing. So here's the tool we made. This is 5/16 rod, and I just threaded it and put a little nut on it to cap it and put it in this little piece of aluminum here. And then what that does, it sits on top of the injector and it measures or gives you something to check this distance that the butterfly is open. It's basically a big round feeler gauge. So you want both of them to be the same. So we got that one in there, got it pressed down. We put this one in here. This one's tight, and I can see that this one is loose. So we need to make a hex link adjustment to make these the same. You would think you'd just leave those things in there and adjust that till they're both tight, but that's not what you do. So I'm not sure which way I have to go, but I need this one to go that way. So I'm just, like I said, I don't know. I could probably figure out which way to go, but I'm gonna go one way and then check it and go the other. So I'm gonna go, say, 3 flats away from me. 1, 2, 3. Now, I can't just recheck it just like this. I have to close that down. I have to loosen this arm and make sure the blades are closing how they're supposed to. So I got to figure out where I left my little tool. So we need to loosen the arm on the shaft to make sure everything's closed, and then tighten it back up. And then we recheck with our gauging material tool we made. Okay, now that's tight. Go back up. That's tight. It's tighter, so I think we went the right way, but we might need to go 1 or 2 more flats. Yeah, it's pretty darn good, I think, actually. Just barely dragging. I'm gonna call that good. Cycle it a couple times. Just barely wants to go in. If I hold that one tight, that one's tight too. And that's that for that part. Moose, you're getting cat hair in my car. What are you doing? Slacking on a job. Next step is to set the clearance of the throttle blades. So to do that, we're gonna use our throttle stops. We had to back these all the way off at the very beginning. For gasoline application, you want 4 thousandths. So we got a 4 thousandths feeler gauge here. Checked it before, it was a little tight. I adjusted that till it barely touched, I thought, but it doesn't seem like it's really doing anything yet. Give it a little bit more. And there we go. That feels about right to me. Like I can feel some resistance, but it's pulling out of there fairly easy. Now there's a throttle stop on the other side as well. And I didn't adjust that one yet, but these are tied together by that length, so feels pretty good on the other side too. So now I'm just gonna lock down the little, I don't know if you guys can see it, there's a little lock nut here on the adjustment on both sides. Wham and bam, somewhere over there. We'll get that locked down, and then we will, I think we'll do a leak down test next. I did a different video a while back, maybe I'll put a link up here, where I did a leak down test and a few other things, so I'm not gonna go into super crazy detail about it, but just for those of you that are only watching now and didn't see the first one, this guy right here is the fuel pump. It spins off of the crankshaft, and then it's got twice as big of a pulley here, so basically the fuel pump turns half the speed of the crankshaft, so whenever the engine's turning, the fuel pump's pumping. I got all my lines disconnected, but the fuel comes out of the fuel pump through this switch, and it goes into this barrel valve. And the barrel valve basically is just like a little, it's a valve in there that you open and close, and it lets more or less fuel in. So the fuel comes in, it's hard to see because I already hooked the lines up, but underneath it there's a line that comes back out to here, and that's a return line that goes back to the tank. And then all these little individual injector lines are also coming out of the metering block. So what the leak down test tells you is how much fuel is leaking by when your throttle blades are in the closed or idle position. So obviously you still need fuel to idle. It's still, the engine's still turning, so it's still actually, even though it's not pumping a lot of fuel because the engine's turning slower, it's still pumping way more fuel than the engine needs. So some of it gets returned to the tank, and this leak down is what kind of lets you set the idle fuel, I guess. What happens is, this is the throttle. You open the throttle, it pulls on that little arm right here, and that opens the barrel valve. So what we're trying to set right now is where it is in the closed position. And so we can use air to do that. The lock nut's loosened up, so we're gonna add some air, and then I'll turn that, and I don't know which way to turn it. Obviously I need to open it, so whichever way I need to turn this to bring this arm up, because that's what happens when you open it, it brings it up. So I guess I need to shorten it a little bit, and we'll get the gauge to 8 to 10. Still at 100. Okay, it doesn't want to go anymore. Wrong way again, every time. Now, again, I'm surprised why this is so much different than it was before. But it appears to be for some reason. I'm going to go for close to 10. Alright, so now that gauge is on 100, that gauge is on 10. It comes back, it's going more to 12. All right, we're still at 100, and we're at 10. Still at 100, still at 10. So that's gonna be our initial leak down. Like I said, I might do it again once I get all the rest of the linkage on there, just to make sure it's closing how it's supposed to close. So that checks that off the list. Leak test is done and checked, everything's good. I was trying to figure out why it had changed so much. I figured it would be like I should check it, but it'd probably be the same, because I didn't really mess with this link right here that adjusts it. But I did mess with the arms on here, and then this shaft, and all that stuff's all tied together. So I guess if this shaft ended up in just a little bit different position, then it would have affected the position of that arm. So I guess I was trying to figure out, I thought something maybe was wrong, but I think it makes sense that since I redid all the butterflies and the shaft positions and all that, it makes sense that that would need, that it wouldn't be exactly right, or even close. It wasn't even really close. So now it's just a matter of putting all the hoses back on. I got to get this leak tester off of here. We got different fuel lines that have to get hooked back up, and radiator lines. And then I guess maybe the hardest thing is going to be, we got to put that, the old distributor thing. I got to put that back in the hole, and it's got to go in the right place. I don't know if it's going to work, but I put some marks on the top of my injector there to kind of like my rotor was facing right here or right here. And I took a video as I pulled it out too. So hopefully I can just get it back in the same place. And obviously it'll need time, but I just want to try to get it back in the same place without having to go start over with find top dead center on number 1. And so we'll try to cross our fingers and hope that that goes back in the hole right. And then, like I said, other than that, it's just putting a bunch of stuff, fuel lines. I got valve covered wiring and all the stuff that just has to go back together. And maybe we'll find out if this thing works again. Oh, there we go. She dropped down. Rotor. Just had to fight me a little bit. Go figure. Nothing ever does that. All right, so hopefully that's right. I put a little mark right here. Turn that on so I can see you guys. Put a little mark right there. That's where the rotor was facing when I took it out. So hopefully that's facing the correct direction once again. Obviously I'll have to, time it or whatever, but at least we should have the distributor dropped in the hole where it belongs. well, bam! I think we got everything put back together how we need to have it put back together. So it's time to fire it up. But unfortunately, there is no fuel in this little guy right here. And this little guy is my primer tank. So I got a little electric fuel pump right here. And I turn that bad boy on and it sends fuel. Let's see, where's it go? It's rubber line into the fuel pump, into this line, and then it goes to the metering block and to all the injectors. So whenever this pump is pumping, it's just squirting fuel down into the injectors. So you need to do that to get it to start because there's no like priming mechanism. I used to, the old school way, before I had that, I used to come out here with the actual turkey baster and squirt a little fuel in each one and then fire it up. I don't have any gas, so I gotta run to the gas station and get a little gas, and then hopefully we'll come back and see if this thing can make some noise. And make some good noise and some nice smooth noise instead of poppity pop 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 noise, which was no good. That thing's been sitting for a while, so I guess I might as well put some juice on it while I run to the gas station. Make sure that we got some battery power. All right, so we're ready to give her a try. Again, I don't know, hopefully the timing is close. I think everything should be ready. We can't, unfortunately, I can't, you know, check all this stuff for fuel leaks because there's no fuel until the engine starts pumping it. So we'll have to, first of all, we'll see what happens. This is mechanical injection. It's not electronic fuel injection. Everybody thinks fuel injection is just starts at the, you know, right away. This is a whole little different deal. So it's gonna turn over for a while. Then I'll send some juice to it and we'll see what happens. Well, unfortunately, I did still see a little bit of backfiring up through the intake when I tried to give her some fuel. Now it's got to warm up a little bit, so I'm not surprised that it died when I tried to keep it running. But also, I don't have any water in this thing, so we'll try it again. I don't want to let it run for too long because I don't have a way to. I don't have a way to cool it down. But we'll see if we can get it fired again and play with it a little bit more. I can turn the distributor a little bit just for some timing. See what happens. All right, well, when I said there's no water in this thing, what I meant is I drained it all out, but drained the radiator, but there's still some in the block, obviously. And then this guy here is supposed to hook up to right there, where that hole is. And yeah, so we spilt a little water. That's all right, I knew that was probably coming. I don't know, it seems better, still a little poppy. So that was the problem I was that's the problem I was starting with. So it's still there, but it wouldn't even freaking run when I took it apart. So we made some sort of progress. But yeah, I don't know. I'll keep tinkering with it. She made some noise. I think that's going to be it for tonight, though. I'm going to get this stuff cleaned up. Going to run and grab some dinner, and then USA versus Canada hockey tonight. Go USA, obviously. I'm going to go watch that. We'll be back. This is probably the end of this video. We'll be back next time working on the Baremetal 55, figuring out what's in all these boxes and putting that bad boy small block in here. Well, we got to take that one out first. You know, we got stuff to do, but come back and watch me do it. Please. Thank you.